Good evening, everyone. I hope everyone is having a lovely evening. Welcome to this evening's KSA webinar. We are proud to have a presentation on pharmacovigilance, and our presenter today is Dr. Nambwa Pamela, who is a pharmacoepidemiologist and pharmacovigilance specialist, and also a pharmacovigilance regulatory officer in the Pharmacy and Poisons Board. Thank you very much, Pamela, for participating in this webinar. You can share your screen and maybe proceed with the presentation. As usual, questions, there's going to be a question and answer session at the end of the presentation. Feel free to post your questions in the chat box. There'll be a link to a poll of about 5 questions which will be shared in the chat box. And after the first part of the presentation, some of the results are going to be discussed. So kindly log into the link and answer the few questions during as the presenter is presenting. This CME is also been sponsored by HOPAC, Hospital Pharmacist Association of Kenya. So karibu daktari, you can proceed and present.
Thank you very much, Terry. My name is Pamela, as I've been introduced. I work at Pharmacy and Poisons Board, Department of Pharmacovigilance, and this basically deals with safety of health products and technologies. And I'm happy to say that this webinar has actually been sponsored by HOPAC, Hospital Pharmacists Association of Kenya, through the PV grant for education. So I'll go straight into my presentation and a brief background on Pharmacy and Poisons Board, that this is the national regulatory authority in Kenya that was established under the Act of Parliament Cap 244 laws of Kenya, and it commenced its activities in the country in 1957. So why do we regulate health products and technologies that we use as healthcare professionals? It is important that we regulate these products so that we are able to protect the health of the public, maintain confidence in the health products that we use at the facility level, at whatever level that we are practicing, and also ensure that the patient have access to quality, safe, and efficacious medical products and health technologies. So when you talk about safety, that is when pharmacovigilance comes in. And for us, the National Pharmacovigilance Center is based at Pharmacy and Poisons Board. It is one of the divisions in product safety department. So one of the functions of Pharmacy and Poisons Board. We have a national spontaneous reporting system tools, which are physical forms, and we also have the electronic platform for the same, which can be accessed by all at whatever time, as long as you have internet access. Then we have the national database system for collecting and managing adverse drug reaction and events, and also adverse events following immunization. So all the individual case safety reports that we have received from healthcare providers, we have a database for the same, and you can be able to access this data anytime. And then for the National Pharmacovigilance System to work, again, we have 2 very important advisory committees that help us review these safety reports that we receive, especially the serious cases. So we have the National Vaccine Safety and Advisory Committee that looks at the serious cases following immunization. And we have Pharmacovigilance Experts Review and Advisory Committee, which is called PERAC, that reviews all health medical products, mostly the drugs and also the medical devices that we use. So any serious event that is experienced, this committee will review and give us recommendation. And finally, for the National Pharmacovigilance System, we must have a risk communication and response plan, which we have. And basically, after conducting all the PV activities, you have to give feedback to the reporters, and whether it is a risk communication, whether it is safety alert, that is also part of the National Pharmacovigilance System. So in a simple way, what is pharmacovigilance for us to understand? This is a WHO definition, that it is basically the science and activities relating to the detection, assessment, understanding, and prevention of adverse effects or other drug-related problems. So it is a word that derived from Greek, where pharmakon means drug, and vigili is basically a Latin word that means to keep watch. So we are being alert on the use of medicines. So it is basically a process of evaluating and improving the safety of marketed medicines. We know the process of drug development. It takes time before it comes to the market, and during the clinical trials, just a small population is exposed to these products. So by the time the product comes to the market, that is the moment when this product is exposed to a larger mass. And at that time, then you can be able to pick out new events that were not picked during the clinical trials. So the key players in pharmacovigilance are basically the regulatory authority, in this case, which is Pharmacy and Poisons Board. We have the public health programs. These ones very key because for them, they also administer their products to very large population, the HIV, the TB, the malaria program. And then we have pharmaceutical companies that are placing the products in our market. And of course, very important is the healthcare professionals, who is you, us, and at some point we become the public or also the patient. So these are the key stakeholders in pharmacovigilance. Scope of PV, initially when pharmacovigilance started, they were just looking at adverse drug reactions in terms of safety and quality. But with time, the scope of pharmacovigilance has actually expanded. And now we are also looking at medication error reporting, off-label use of medicines, poor quality and substandard, poor quality or substandard and falsified medicines. We are looking at adverse drug reactions and adverse events, incidences and adverse events following immunization. So for incidences, we are talking about the use of medical devices. We are also monitoring medicine use in pregnancy, abuse and misuse of medicines, case reports of acute and chronic poisoning, and then also interactions between medicines, chemicals, and other substances that we use like food. So roles and obligations of healthcare providers in pharmacovigilance. It's important that we also remember that we have the rules, regulations, and the guidelines that actually guide us and obligate us as healthcare workers to provide safety information that we come across. So it's important that you visit the PPB website and be able to look at the PVPMS rules that have been published on the website and get to understand what is our role and obligation as healthcare workers. So one of the obligations is that patient awareness of possible serious reactions and development of a culture to report reactions is essential for any pharmacovigilance system. And healthcare providers basically will provide an essential link between the detection and management of adverse drug reactions and adverse events in patients and reporting the same to PPB, because we are the ones who interact with the patients one-on-one. So the healthcare provider then shall be expected to conduct patient education in terms of adverse drug reaction and events. So basically what you're saying is that you need to understand the medications, the drugs that you're giving your patient, what are the possible side effects so that you can explain to them even as you administer to them. And then detect and initiate appropriate clinical management and treatment of patients presenting with adverse drug reaction or events. And after managing these events, we expect that you report all these ADRs and adverse effects to Pharmacy and Poisons Board. And besides reporting to PPB, you can be able to utilize the collected data on ADRs for decision-making at facility level, because we know some facilities have active medicine and therapeutics committee. So you can actually present these cases to the MTCs and you can be able to take a decision based on evidence. Then promote rational use of drugs and also participate in capacity building of other healthcare providers and the public when it comes to safety monitoring of health products and technologies. So who should report ADRs and adverse drug reaction and adverse events? So reporters will include all healthcare providers from all cadres, from both public and private health sectors. Then we have pharmaceutical manufacturing companies, the marketing authorization holders, the local technical representatives who are actually placing this product in our market. We have patients or patient representatives or guardians and the general public who are also encouraged to report, and we'll see how the public can actually report to PPB, and any other affected parties can report to PPB. So what are we expected to report? It is important that we report all the expected and the unexpected suspected adverse drug reactions and adverse events. So whether it is documented, whether you know that, if I would give an example that stavudine causes lipodystrophy and you encounter that, then we expect that you report so that we also have our own statistics as a country. Report all medication errors, report all suspected poor quality health products and technologies, and then all adverse events following immunizations. We also have transfusions-related reactions. We know at facility level, we have a lot of blood transfusion that occurs, and we have patients who are getting reactions. So we have a way of reporting this to PPB. All adverse events related to the use of medical devices, case reports of acute poisoning and chronic poisoning, abuse, overdose, and misuse of medicines, then adverse interactions of medicines with chemicals and other medicines and food, and also lack of therapeutic effect. At times we administer drug, it doesn't work, patient comes back with the same condition, we just switch the medication and we don't remember to report this. It's important that we report so that PPB can do investigation and see if it is an issue of efficacy of this product. So we have quite a number of reporting tools, and they are both available in a physical form and also on our Pharmacovigilance electronic reporting platform. So we have, currently we have 6 forms and with different colors, as you can see. So we have the yellow form, which is used to reporting suspected adverse drug reactions. So yellow form is for the drug. The pink form is for reporting quality defects for the drugs. And then we have the cream form for blood transfusion reactions. We have the blue form that is used to report medication errors. We have the green form that is used to report medical device incidences, and a white form that is used to report vaccine issues, adverse events following immunization. And in the center here, we have something called patient alert card. This is a card that is normally given to a patient who has experienced a serious reaction. And a good example would be a patient who has a sulfur reaction, given maybe a sulfur drug and got a reaction. So for precaution, they are given this card and are advised to present it to the healthcare provider anytime they visit a facility. So when are we expected to report? Any suspected ADR or AE shall be reported as soon as possible to the National Pharmacovigilance Center at the Pharmacy and Poisons Board. So we could have fatal cases, and when you look at the guidelines published on the PPB website, guidelines for vigilance and safety of health products and technologies, it's very clear that for fatal cases, the board shall be notified immediately, and the final report should be submitted within 48 hours. That is for the fatal cases. For the serious non-fatal cases, these shall be reported within 15 calendar days. And for the non-serious local cases, this shall be reported within 30 calendar days. How and where to report? So all the respective reporting forms are simple and easy to fill. So we expect that you report the suspected adverse drug reaction or event as soon as it occurs. And there are minimum requirements that are expected of this report for it to be considered as a valid report. So number 1 is that we should have an identifiable patient. And by saying identifiable patient, we don't really need the names of the patient. It could just be the initials. So PN is initials for Pamela Nambwa, and that is an identifiable patient. We need to have an identifiable medicine, a vaccine, the blood, and blood products or a medical device that actually caused the suspected event. We also require an identifiable suspected ADR or adverse event. What is this event that you're reporting to PPB? And an identifiable source of information or a reporter. And basically this is important when it comes to follow-up. When you have to do follow-up to get more information for this report, it's important that we get the details of the reporter for the purpose of follow-up. So the reporting channels are as follows. Number one, you can use the online pharmacovigilance electronic reporting platform, which you can be accessed through that link. We also have a mobile platform, a mobile application for both the Android and the iOS. So for the Android, you will go to the Play Store and download the MPVRS app. And for the iOS, you'll go to the App Store and also download the same. So because the app has not been used widely, when you click on that, when you're trying to download that, it comes as movers. So you should not be worried. Just click MPPRS and you should be able to download that. And then another channel of reporting is email. You can actually just fill the hard copy form, scan, and send the same to pv@ppb.go.ke. Or you can submit the physical form to the pharmacy department. They can be able to upload this to the pharmacovigilance electronic reporting system. So for manual reporting forms, these are available at public and private health facilities. And if the physical forms are not really available there, you can be able to download the soft copies, which are also available at PPB website. So the general public and patients can report via the USSD code *271# and follow the prompts, which are very simple. You can just ask, it will ask you if you want to use English or Kiswahili, and ask you which medication did you take, what event did you experience, simple questions that the public can actually be able to answer. And with that, once we get that notification from PPB, then we can be able to call and find out more details about the event and the product. Then for marketing authorization holders, they can report in the ICH E2B format through the XML file via the email at PPB. So some of the activities that have been happening at the National Pharmacovigilance Center. So for the PMS reporting trends, we did a summary, and you can see from 2011 up to 2023. This was end of 2023, the number of reports that have been received at Pharmacy and Poisons Board. So the blue line represents the manual reports, the orange one represents the electronic reports. So you can see actually the manual reports are very, very minimal. So we have a lot of people who are using the electronic platform, and cumulatively we have around 26,767 reports that have been received at Pharmacy and Poisons Board. So in terms of reporting, cadres, I thought it's important that we share this. So we have, I think, all the cadres that are available in the country in our reporting platform. So when you're using the electronic reporting platform, when you click on reporting cadres, there's a drop-down menu where you can pick your relevant profession or cadre. And as we did the analysis, you can see the highest was for research assistants. So research assistants, normally we use them when we are doing active surveillance, active research, or active follow-up of some of these medicines that are registered in the country. So this was representing an active surveillance that we are doing for COVID-19 vaccines. That's why you see research assistants were mostly reporting to us. And then we have pharmacists at 30.2% and pharmaceutical technologists. And these are followed by clinical officers, nurses, and other healthcare professionals come at 1.3%. So it basically means that the work of pharmacovigilance is mostly concentrated at the pharmacy department, but we are trying to encourage all the other healthcare professionals to take part in pharmacovigilance because we are all interacting with the patients one-on-one. So in terms of reporting counties, you can see Nairobi is the leading county, followed by Kajiado, Homa Bay, Kisumu, Mombasa, then Kiambu, we have Bungoma, Meru, Kirinyaga, Machakos, Kisii, Kakamega, and Siaya. So those are the counties that have been reporting to us recently. So what happens to the reported events, the adverse drug reactions, the adverse events that are reported to PPB? Normally, the first thing is the acknowledgement of receipt of the report, the individual case safety report. So it could be, if it comes through the system, it will be an automatic acknowledgement of receipt of the same. And then we process this report in confidence. And there'll be a follow-up done by PV officers from PPB. If they need more information about a certain report that has been submitted, this will be done. And that's why we are telling you we require reporter information. And then at times when we receive these reports, they are classified in terms of severity. So we have mild, moderate, severe, and we have serious and non-serious reports. So for the serious reports, most of the time we require investigations. So investigation will be conducted for these serious reports so that we gather as much information as possible before we submit it to the advisory committee, which for our case is the PERAC that looks at serious cases for the medicines. So they will conduct causality assessment, and I will be able to see what causality assessment is, provide feedback, they provide feedback to the secretariat, which is PPB, and then appropriate regulatory actions will be taken based on the outcome of causality assessment. So as Kenya, we are not working in isolation. We are part of the global body, the regional, local, and international bodies. So we share the identified data with the global database, in this case, which is the WHO, UMC, so that we can be able to see what other countries are seeing when it comes to these medications that we are using. And then finally, we do quarterly summary trends at the end of each quarter and paste the same on our website. So you can be able to visit PPB website, and under pharmacovigilance, you'll be able to see the summary trends of all the reports that have been received in that quarter. So causality assessment. So this assessment of causality is a multi-component exercise, which involves observation of the reporter, which most of the time for us is healthcare providers. Then you can have even patient interview. At times when you go for investigations, at times you have to contact the patient and interview them. Laboratory tests are very important, and other similar reports to the same medicines. So this will all contribute to causality assessment of any event and a suspected drug, so that this will be used to estimate the strength and the relationship between the drug exposure and the occurrence of adverse drug reaction or event. So causality assessment is conducted by the PERAC, which I have already said, and recommendations are issued to the CEO for implementation. Feedback, we said feedback is very important. Risk communication as one of the component of the National Pharmacovigilance System. So we provide feedback to various stakeholders in various forms. Number one is acknowledgement of receipt via email. Number two, we have follow-up calls from PV officers, and especially for serious adverse events. And then we have feedback on causality assessment that is conducted by PERAC. And finally, we have quarterly pharmacovigilance summaries that can also be accessed on our PPB website under pharmacovigilance. So flow of information, it's important that we know that we can actually receive reports directly from patients to PPB, or patients can report to the healthcare providers, which can either be public or public health facilities or private. And this will go through the sub-county and the county team. And we have the county PV focal persons who are actually very active when it comes to pharmacovigilance activities. And these ones will submit these reports to PPB. And then we also get the information or reports directly from wholesalers and retailers, from the National Referral Hospital, from the Sentinel sites, from the clinical trial sites, from the public health programs, and also the pharmaceutical industry that are placing the products in the market. So we have flow of information, and the dotted line represents feedback communication between PPB and the stakeholders. And from PPB, you can see we also share information with the WHO, and through this mechanism, then we can also be able to access what other countries are reporting. Some of the regulatory actions that we have taken, they are pasted on our website, and this is just a screenshot of the website for PPB. So you can go under safety alerts, and you can be able to see all the communication that we've had with the stakeholders. So at this point, I would request my colleague from PV to paste the poll question. Then you can take just maybe 5 minutes at most to respond to some of the questions before we go to the last part of the presentation. Thank you. Dr. Terry?
So, Dr. Pam, I think the poll questions have been posted on the link. If participants can use that link to answer the poll questions, please.
Thank you.
Sorry
Thank you
for
very
that. I had a small technical issue.
Okay. So I think you can guide me. If members are already through, then we can proceed with the last part of the presentation.
Okay, so 5 minutes. We'll take 5 minutes, then we can proceed.
So, Dr. Terry, I think on our side, I'm seeing a few responses, I think about 16, but I don't know whether we'll need to give more time, maybe 5 more minutes, because on the meeting, we have quite a good number versus, the responses that we are receiving.
And maybe just give maybe 2 more minutes, then we proceed.
Okay, noted.
Okay, I think we can proceed in the interest of time.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. So I think we can proceed. So summary of bupivacaine cases received at the National Pharmacovigilance Center since March 2021. But I must say that I think the issues of bupivacaine stroke heavy marcaine have been received, I think have been ongoing since 2016. And I am presenting on these 12 because these are the ones that we've been able to conduct investigation and submitted the same to the PERAC for causality assessment. So for that period, a total of 12 individual case safety reports have been received from 7 facilities at the National Pharmacovigilance Center. And we had one report from one of the national referral hospital. We had 7 reports from private hospital and 4 reports from public hospitals. So reporting in terms of brands, there were 4 main brands of bupivacaine that have been reported to have suspected causing these adverse events. So one of the brands had 6 reported events and 5 batches were actually implicated. Then we had 3 reported events from another batch, and all the 3 occurred by using one batch of this product. For batch Y, we had 2 reported events and also 1 batch implicated. And for batch Z, we had also 1 reported event and 1 batch implicated as to have been suspected to cause the event. So why bupivacaine? Because all the 12 reported cases that we received at the National Pharmacovigilance Center were indicated to be serious. And for us, when you tell us that this is a serious report, there's a criteria. You have to tell us why you're telling us this report is serious. So number 1, you can see 7 of the reports had an outcome of death. So 7 fatalities. We had 3 cases that were life-threatening, and we had 2 cases that had hospitalization or prolonged hospitalization. So basically, if I remember well, I think most of these patients ended up in ICU, and basically means they had to stay in hospital for quite some time. So in terms of summary of events that were reported, most of the reports had convulsions as one of the events. So you also realize that a patient would experience more than one event. So there were those who are getting convulsions, hypotension. There are those who are getting confusion, irritability, loss of consciousness, rash, itchiness, therapeutic failure in some cases, and muscle spasms, twitching, pain, and also hypertension. And if I remember again, when they were conducting the causality assessment, the twitching was very common, that it was all radiating from the gluteal muscles for all the patients who experienced this twitching. So causality assessment was conducted, and of the 12 reports, 5 reports were given a causality of probable. Probable here basically means that it's probable that the bupivacaine caused the event that was reported. We had 3 reports that were given possible as a causality, that it's possible the drug bupivacaine caused the event. And then we have 4 reports that were not assigned causality. And this could be contributed to the fact that the report did not have sufficient information, or when we did the investigation, we were not able to get all the details. So it was difficult for the committee to make a decision. So they did not assign causality for the 4 reports. So some of the recommendations that were made by PERAC when they did the causality assessment of this bupivacaine, number 1 was sensitization of anesthesiologists through the Kenya Society of Anaesthesiologists to encourage reporting of adverse drug reaction, as the extent of the problem may actually be underestimated. So we could have a number of cases happening out there, and because maybe people are not aware of how and where to report, we could be talking of 12, and there could be more cases. So this is one of the recommendations that we're actually implementing that was given by PERAC, desensitization. So another recommendation was for us to conduct an online survey among users of bupivacaine for the purpose of finding out also the extent of unreported ADRs. So we will be working on a comprehensive questionnaire probably, and we should be able to share with the team. Then they can be able to give us the feedback or the experience with the use of this molecule. Then the Secretariat is supposed to review the cases and confirm which cadres administered the bupivacaine, as this may have contributed to the reported fatalities due to limited supervision. We know we have anesthesiologists, and also at the lower level facilities, most of the time we have anesthetists who also administer the same medication. So it would be important to get a clear picture. And in one or two of the facilities that had reported these events, the recommendation was continuous medical education on the on-job training to anesthetists on patient selection criteria and also ASA classification. So that should be the end of our presentation today. And our mantra is that you need not be certain, just be suspicious, and report all the suspected events, incidences, medication errors, and therapeutic ineffectiveness, and also poor quality medical products and health technologies to Pharmacy and Poisons Board. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pamela, for that lovely presentation. I think it has helped to intensify the message of safety in our practice that we keep preaching to ourselves, each other, and to our younger colleagues. Before we go to a question and answer session, maybe I'd like to give a minute to Dorothy, who is a representative from the Hospital Pharmacist Association of Kenya. Maybe she'd like to give us, just take a minute and tell us more about HOPAC before we now proceed to the question and answer. Again, feel free to post your question in the chat box or just raise your hand and unmute yourself and we proceed to ask your question. Dorothy?
Thank you very much, Teddy, and also Audrey and Dr. Kimani, the team from the KSA. So we are glad that you've given us an opportunity to share about patient safety and how we can all play a part. HOPAC is a body that is focused on promoting best standards in hospital pharmacy practice, and we acknowledge we cannot do this without a multidisciplinary approach. And also this is also one way of being able to communicate with various stakeholders, particularly the anesthesia team, because at least that's a cadre that we are managing to get some few reports from, and we are just looking for a way of how we can close the loop when we get the reports, or even where we have challenges with getting adequate information for reports. So thank you, and I'm hoping that we have gotten champions for patient safety from this session. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Dorothy. I think we'll now proceed to the question and answer session. First off, I have a question. You mentioned, Pamela, that one of your mandates is the off-label use of medications. Maybe you could kindly elaborate more on that, because I think a lot of us in our practice, we tend to use to do a lot of this off-label use of medication, especially, for example, those of us who do a lot of regional anesthesia. Sometimes we tend to use some drugs that are maybe to try and prolong the block. So maybe you could just comment more about the use of off-label use of medication. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Teddy. I think that I mentioned the issue of off-label use when it comes to the scope of pharmacovigilance. So you're saying that we are monitoring safety of medicines, whether it's medication error, whether it is adverse drug reactions, adverse events following immunization, and also where we have cases of off-label use. So because we know this is happening, and where a healthcare provider has prescribed a medication off-label, and there's an event that has been experienced, we are telling them to report to us so that we are able to monitor the same. So it is in terms of scope of pharmacovigilance activity. So where we also practicing off-label use of medicine, please, we are encouraging that we report all those events that are experienced to PPB. Thank you.
Maybe if I could also add in, my name is Christabel. I also work with Pamela at Pharmacy and Poisons Board. So ideally for any off-label use, you should have, the clinician should be able to use it based on evidence, because by the time you're using it as off-label, then it means there is a pool of evidence you've picked that you're using. And it's also usually advisable that the patient should actually be informed that the drug is being used off-label. So when you look at the WHO guidances on off-label use, it's actually advisable that the patient or the guardian should be informed and they should consent to it, because should anything go wrong, and yet that's not what is registered, the product is registered for in the country of use, then it can have litigation. It's just that most people might not know that. But if you get someone who is aware of this, it can become a litigious issue. So it's also important that the patients are told, and then we have consent, and reporting is key, because through these reports, that's how sometimes you find that even the market authorization holders end up now including other uses that had not been identified before, but now are used. For example, Viagra, the erectile dysfunction use was actually an off-label use. But then right now we know that that's basically the main indication for Viagra. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Maybe another question I'd want to know is the role of the pharmacovigilance reporting when it comes to medical legal cases. Let's say, for example, you had an adverse reaction, and then maybe patient decides to take you to court. Do you usually step in to come and in such cases, do you give evidence against or for? So maybe in terms of the medical legal cases, maybe you can make a comment on that. Where do you come in?
Thank you again, Teddy. For this, I think we come in terms of after causality assessment and our PERAC recommendation, and I can tell you, we've had, I think the first case that was handled by PERAC was, it actually ended up in court. And in this case, then I think the complainant actually requested that the chair or one member of the court to become a witness for this case. So we will give our scientific and factual evidence based on the activities or the recommendations that were issued by PERAC, and I think that is it, because I know the questions that have been coming up is how compensations and the likes when it comes to someone being taken to court. So PPB will come in terms of causality assessment that was conducted, the facts that were presented to the committee and the recommendations that were given to committee. So if the healthcare provider will require that the committee provides evidence, then the committee is available to do that.
So in the event of an adverse reaction, will reporting to the Pharmacovigilance Regulatory Board, will reporting the incidents, will it act like some form of mitigation? And if an event happens and you fail to report, can that be used against you maybe when it comes to medical legal cases?
Thank you. Ideally, when you look at the rules and the regulations that were gazetted recently, the healthcare workers are actually mandated to report, and it is actually wrong if you were in the know or in the knowledge of an event that happened to a patient or anyone, and in your practice, and you do not report, because it's important that we report so that we are able to prevent such an event occurring to another person. So it is not illegal, you will not be held accountable, but it's important that we all develop the culture of reporting so that at the end of the day, we all contribute in preventing public harm to the rest of the public. So it's basically advisable that we report and contribute to the knowledge of safety of these medicines that we are using.
Thank you. So in the chat box, Kevin Omani is asking about regulating of lookalike drug vials. I think that's a big problem for a lot of us. Maybe a comment on that, please.
Thank you. Again, this look-alike, sound-alike issue is a global, it's actually a global issue. But what we are encouraging the healthcare providers is to report, because you know, for pharmacovigilance to take any regulatory action, the question that will be posed to us is, do you have evidence of this complaint that you are recommending a change of package or a change of names based on facts? So it's important, as we are encouraging the healthcare workers, when they encounter all this, they need to report to us. And yes, through the medication errors reports that we have received at PPB, we are actually planning to conduct a survey and see the extent of this problem, because we've received quite a number of reports, and when we looked at them, some of them were actually caused by these look-alike products. So yes, PPB is supposed to regulate that, but it can only be done with evidence from reports that we receive from healthcare providers or the users of this product. So I encourage that these reports be submitted to PPB and action can be taken based on that.
Thank you, Pamela. I'm seeing a comment.
Dr. Teddy, sorry, this is Dr. Okello. Maybe you can allow me to ask a question?
Karibu, Daktari, go ahead.
On the same look-alike drugs, Dr. Pamela, we are having serious challenges in anesthesia, and I think the PPB should probably be more proactive in terms so that we prevent this. We do believe that PPB is the one responsible for allowing this in the market, and some of the drugs that we use in anesthesia, you have 3 or 4 different drugs packaged exactly the same, labeling exactly the same font in exactly the same ampule. So what if we work towards, instead of waiting for evidence, because evidence here could probably mean fatalities and many deaths, is it possible that the PPB can actually be proactive to prevent this and let the importers or manufacturers or whoever they are, give them certain guidelines in terms of packaging and labeling? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Okello, for that comment. That is very true. And I can tell you, even as we are speaking now, I think we have worked on a protocol, and we want to do a survey. We want to do a survey on the look-alike, sound-alike product. And we should be able to give guidance to the manufacturers based on the outcome of the survey that we'll have. So we hope that we should be able to prevent these medication errors based on the look-alike, sound-alike product.
So Zipporah Gadoya has a comment stating that in pediatric anesthesia, we also use a lot of off-label drugs. I'm also seeing a question. Dr. Keller has also asked, should we also report off-label users that go very well?
Interesting. Dr. Christabel, can you respond to that?
Okay, we've instances where we've had people actually asking that they've used off-label products which have worked well. But then again, with science, if this drug is to be changed or the manufacturer is supposed to include this use as part of the use, then there has to be studies that will be done of a given number of maybe population for them to gather evidence. Because when it comes to changing or updating in indications of a product, you may not just do it with maybe a few patients that you've used. So in such a case, if you see that the drug actually is giving better uses or indication, then it needs to come to the attention of even the manufacturer. And because most of the time you'll find that they usually have principal investigators that they have who can conduct studies on that and be able to see if the drug can be repurposed for a different use or a different indication can be included on that. So what I would encourage is for any off-label uses that on any off-label use that you do and you get good results, it will be good to document this. It can be brought to both the attention of PPB or the market authorization holder so that this can help in conducting more studies around that to be able to have a pool of evidence that can support this, that actually we are using this because it was accidentally discovered maybe, but then it is giving us good results for this particular condition. Thank you.
Thank you, Christabel. I'm seeing there's a raised hand from Zipporah Gaduya. Go ahead, you can unmute yourself. Gary?
Okay, thank you, and thank you for the people from Pharmacy and Poisons Board. My take is that from like pediatric anesthesia, like I said earlier, if we were to use only drugs, because most drugs that you know that are in our country are all labeled for use in children over 2 years, for not recommended for children under 12. But that is what we have. If we didn't use them, then it means that we would not be giving anesthesia. What would be your general guidance on the same? Because even the most commonly used drugs, they are not, you will not find a drug that is recommended from neonatal age or for children. And yet we are using these drugs, and not only here, globally. But what would your comment be on that?
Maybe I can respond to that. So yes, this is something, as you've said, that is not a challenge just within Kenya or maybe low middle income countries, but it's a problem that has been there. So last year, WHO had, sorry, I can't remember how the committee is called, but this committee was actually put in place to review the pediatric formulations that are there. And it was as a result of complaints and issues that have arisen with the formulations that are currently in the market. And that is, okay, this is, actually I would say this is still part of pharmacovigilance. Like if the clinicians are able to raise this and give a demand to say that one of the reasons why probably we are getting the medication errors, it's because titrating the dosages for the neonates or the pediatric population is difficult versus the formulation that is there. This is data that can be used to submit even to WHO and tell them these are the challenges we are having, and they are able to give guidances even to the manufacturers on what to use. I'll give an example like misoprostol. We know initially when it was being put out in the market, it was for treatment of ulcers. But then along the way, it was being used as an abortifacient. But then again, we know it is used in postpartum hemorrhage also, and as induction of labor. And one of the challenges that was there is that the amount, because at some point, I think through the Gynecology Society and through the Ministry of Health, this was now being used even in the facilities. So they were recommending 50 milligrams, but what is in the market is 200 milligrams. And it is not scored to be used in form of the 200 milligrams. So chances are there is likelihood of either overdosing or underdosing someone, because we are not so sure of the distribution of this. So in such a case, PPB cannot go, let's say, to tell the manufacturer that you need to change it, but from the ministry, the end user, they can actually raise this question. And I know there were discussions around that so that a manufacturer can be told that these are the needs that we have for the gyna issues for using the misoprostol. So in the same way, since we are having this discussion, these are issues that can be raised even through the Pediatric Society of Kenya, and then it is gathered and it is given as a request through the ministry that yes, this is what is being recommended, but even the procurement that is being done, since procurement is done through the ministry, this is what we would need as the Pediatric Association to be able to be used for their children. And once that is passed, it will trickle down not only to the public facilities, but even to the private facilities. But it's a challenge that, yes, needs to be looked into.
Thank you, Christabel. I'm seeing there's a question by Dr. Umani. I think maybe it's to do with what evidence do we need to show when it comes to the similar vials? What sort of evidence do we need to submit? Are they pictures or what?
Yes, I think I had also responded to him. Yes, part of the evidence that we require are the photos of the look-alike medications. And I think as I've responded to him, I've said we will be sharing questionnaires soon. I think to the healthcare providers, just to share with us this information, and we'll also be looking at the photos so that we can use as evidence of the medications that are actually causing medication errors because of the look-alike. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I have a question, Dr. Teddy.
Go ahead, Doctor.
Thank you, Christabel and Pamela. I'm still a bit more concerned about the look-alike things. I think there's still a lot of work to be done. So when you say that we share the vials that lead to the errors, must we also prove that there was an error? Because we have a lot of those ones. So will you require an evidence that there was an error, or is the sharing of the look-alike will be adequate?
So if you get a chance to go through the blue form, that is the one for reporting medication errors, we categorize them. So there are those that will reach the patient and those that haven't reached the patient. So the fact that you've identified that these two vials look alike, or the whatever is written on it has the potential of sounding alike and causing errors, you're actually still supposed to bring it to the attention of PPB. So it was a near, should I say not near miss, but basically it is something you will have prevented the occurrence of that by picking it and bringing it to our attention. So it doesn't have to have caused the error. The fact that you've identified that it's a potential for error, then it is something that needs to be reported. And as Pamela said, the issue of medication errors is something that has gained global attention. And in 2023, there is a guidance that WHO gave for countries to now use, and it has the different roles for different stakeholders: the regulator, the Ministry of Health, the manufacturer, the healthcare workers. And the issue why sometimes it might not be easy for you to just tell the manufacturer to change this, because remember again, these drugs when produced, it's not maybe for Kenya only. It is something that is affecting, maybe the same products are being used in a different country, and maybe that particular landscape, they've been not really much medication errors reported around that. But we are now raising the issues, and it's coming to attention that yes, as a healthcare worker, you might do everything possible for you to prevent the error. Like, let's say if you figure out that these vials look alike, probably as one of the colleagues has said, that you can have not really, like, you'll find some facilities and maybe Dr. Yua can also say something about how Kenyatta maybe has come up with mechanisms of trying to prevent that. But then remember, there are some drugs that the patient has to go home with. And that's where we are likely also to get more errors. So with this guidance that WHO has given, and part of the reason why we are able to develop the protocol we've developed is to come up with ways of how to, we'll come up with measures that should it be that we have cases where it's unavoidable to reduce, to change maybe some of the packaging or to change the labeling, what other mitigation measures can be put in place to do that. And maybe as I'm talking on that, there's someone who asked, how do you plan to improve medication error reporting considering our medical legal landscape? So Killian, just to reassure you that whenever you report, as Dr. Nambwa said, usually this information is handled in confidence. And we don't, even when we are doing follow-up, when we come back to the facility to do investigation, we don't come and say, so-and-so is the one who reported. We'll just be able, but we have to get consent from you also to gather more information from you. And as she said, sometimes we have to go maybe to even the store, the pharmacy, or even talk to the patient themselves. If they got any reactions, how was it and how was it handled? So currently, we don't share the information and it's not used to penalize the person who has reported. So whatever you report is in confidence. We only have your contact because we need to follow you up for us to be able to get more information, because sometimes, as Pamela said, whatever information has been sent might not be sufficient for us to do causality assessment.
Hello, can I say something?
Karibu, Dr. Gweno.
Yeah, now, there is a practice which I used to see in South Africa, that in an institution where a brand of a drug has been used for a long time and people have come to identify that brand with the medicine. So if there is a change in the dosage, that's let us say like we are used to 5 milligrams per mil. The vial is 5 milligrams, so 1 milligram per mil of Domicam. So if the brand changes to 15 milligrams, that is 5 milligrams per mil, or there is a change in the color or look-alike, then the hospitals were duty-bound to issue a memo as part of good practice to alert the clinicians about the change. And that was by the law. And I was told that is by their law. So does that one apply here in Kenya, that if an institution has been using a particular brand and then there's a change, they have an obligation to issue a written memo to the users about the change of brand, and they give them adequate time to internalize that. You can, because they will say they needed to at least a week or so, a reasonable time. That is what their law says. So that one applies to here in Kenya, that the institution needed to issue us with memos that there's a change, so that we be aware of that. Does that one apply according to Pharmacy and Poisons Board?
Thank you, Dr. Ogweno. That's a very good contribution. And as far as I know, I think that does not apply. It's not in our legal requirement that institutions are supposed to inform the practitioners on the same. But what I know is, as Dr. Christabel, I said, I think good practices in some facilities, and Dr. Yuak here can share some of the practices. And the idea is to actually encourage pharmacy. We have ways of how we prevent medication errors. And I think whatever you have suggested is one of good practices that we can actually adopt and advise the Department of Pharmacy to probably use that as one of the approaches. Because as we know, pharmacy are the ones who actually get this product and distribute to the other departments in the facility. And so it would be important that they communicate such changes, because I can tell you, for some of the reports that we've received or the cases that we've received, we actually found conflict of information from the theater and from the pharmacy, saying they submitted, they provided this product, but from the theater you find that it's a different information altogether. So yes, that's good contribution that can actually be borrowed as a best practice. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Chokwe, you have something to say?
Yes, good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, thank you very much from the team from the Pharmacy and Poisons Board for interacting with us. I've made several comments in the chat box, but most significantly, how else do you all control the medications that are regarded as high potency in the anesthetic field that are unfortunately freely available to people in open pharmacy? And we have multiple drug outlets today, and we have no idea who's managing these things. We have a big problem in anesthesia, not locally. Agents such as fentanyl globally are giving us a problem in the sense that they're being used as street medication, and very soon we'll find out their way onto our streets. How are you preventing this? Secondly, is it possible to control the number of generics that probably get into our market? And are we able to have quality control from the national, probably laboratories, who can actually tell us the active ingredients in a lot of these substances? The questions you're seeing being asked in this particular forum is because anesthetists by design keep on asking one another a lot of these questions as regards the potency, side effects, and effects that of the drugs that we use, because unlike other physicians, we prescribe, administer, and monitor all the medications that we are giving to the patients, rather than waiting for the patients to come and tell us after 3 days their headache or their fever has settled. If the patient does not sleep, it's because that medication did not work. If it's bupivacaine that was given you as a patient, then you definitely know and you can target what agent you're using. So we're in a unique position to report and actually monitor a lot of these drugs. And we will want you more and more in our space to understand our challenges. Even the simple labeling of drugs that are highly potent with microscopic lettering is pretty dangerous for all clinical scenarios. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Chokwe. And sorry, at some point, I don't know if it was my internet, but I'll try. I hope I got your questions well. So number one, in terms of reduction of the number of generic brands in Kenya, on the Kenyan market, Kenya is part of the TRIPS treaty. Unfortunately, PPB does not control intellectual property rights. So the way it is in the current law, we are not able to control, to say that maybe we are capping off number of generic brands at this number. But there are discussions that are going on within even the East African community, within the IGAD, within the AMA, as we are aware currently with the promulgation of the African Medicines Agency. This is a discussion that is being looked at to see how they can handle this against also the treaties that these countries already signed into allowing the free trade of products. So as it is right now, within the current laws that are there, PPB is not able to put a cap and say that we can only have 80, say, or 20 brands of a particular product. Then in terms of what is PPB doing in terms of controlling of the availability of these products at different levels. Again, as we are aware, in Kenya, by the time a law or an act is passed and put into being, it can really take time. So when we look at the CAP 244, it was an old act that was in place since 1957. So there, through the rules and regulations that were passed in 2022, PPB is now also working on amending what we call scheduling. And basically what the scheduling will help is that it will provide levels of practice. At what point should certain medication be available? Because as it is in the current law, there's a bit of gray areas in it. So going forward, even at levels of prescribers, levels of dispensers, when we have the schedules in place, it will be able to bring this into control. The issues of over-the-counter, the issues of even which hospitals can handle which medication, this will be done at that. And then there was also the part where you say that, and I'm happy we are having this discussion because remember, you're the users of the medication. So some of these things, you're able to see them through your practice. And I know with all these medications, there are usually inserts that are put there to guide us. We have what we call summary product characteristics that also are provided. And that's why we are encouraging that unless this information is shared back, unless we get feedback of the challenges you're getting while using this medication, we may not know. The assumption might be that, yes, these are healthcare workers, the manufacturer has provided you with instructions, and that is what is being followed. But as you've raised the issue, if we are able to get this feedback, it will really help us to know what else we can demand from the manufacturers so that we prevent future occurrences of the same. Thank you.
Just a follow-up for that, would you be able to give us a point person in your council who we can collaborate with as KSA and anesthesia practitioners to facilitate this? Because I think we have a very special need as far as anesthetic practice is concerned and its regulation of the drugs that find our way into our workspace. Thank you very much.
Yes, we are here, and Dr. Pamela provided the email. So this email is, we actively look at it, it's the departmental email, and either me, Pamela, or Dr. Martha, or any other of our colleagues, once we get this information, and depending on the issues that you've raised, we can always get in touch, and if we need to have a meeting between PPB and the society, or the association, this is something that we can do because there are conversations that we've had with others. So it's not something that will be unique or different. Because for us, by getting this information and the complaints we have, at the end of the day, we'll also be helping PPB achieve its mandate of ensuring patient safety.
Thank you, Pam, for responding on that. Just to, Christabel, for responding on that, just to add, within KNH, among the measures we put in place for look-alike, sound-alike, is having labels that we keep insisting from pharmacy that before you dispense, especially for the LASAs, the look-alike, sound-alikes, they must be affixed, and because more often it's the nurses who are collecting, they need to be made aware. We've taken note of the suggestion, the good suggestion from Dr. Bueno, to alert the users of changes, and that's something I think we can take up and implement, and also share it as a best practice so that across different hospitals, they can pick that as a best practice. And with regards to medication errors, because we noted that there's a lot of fear of people reporting on the PPB system. So you'll find sometimes facilities have internal mechanisms of reporting, and then now we can be able to de-identify the data and send the summary of the reports for action, for recommendations to the Pharmacy and Poisons Board. But within Kenyatta, we now started employing an in-house system of being able to report the errors and be able to see how we can mitigate against them. I hope I managed to clear some of the questions you had asked, Christabel.
Yes, Dorothy.
I'm seeing there's a question by Emma Mutio. Number one, advice on generic drugs for anesthesia. And number two, how can we ensure that antidotes are available everywhere? For example, intralipid, wherever bupivacaine is used.
So I'm not so sure exactly what Daktari means on advice on generic drugs for anesthesia. Is it that maybe she can clarify on that? And then on the second question on how can we ensure that antidotes are available everywhere. So now, PPB doesn't unfortunately do procurement. So that will be dependent on the hospital procurement procedures. If they are government hospitals, maybe through KEMSA or MEDS. If they are private facilities, then they have their own unique procurement procedures that PPB does not have control over. But maybe if Daktari can elaborate on the first question, then it would be easier to know, yeah, what exactly she wanted to know.
Okay, can I comment? This is Emma.
Go ahead, Daktari.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, my question is about, you know, for example, when we have a drug, a common one has been bupivacaine, where you use different manufacturers' drugs, and you find the effect is different based on whichever company. I think we have many examples. For example, if I can just use that. So I'm just thinking in terms of patient safety, how can we like regulate? Because, you know, most of the time, for example, as an anesthesia provider, when you're called to do a case somewhere, you'll use whatever is there. So I think there's need for like guidance on that. And then when I'm asking about this issue of antidotes, having gone around many hospitals, we find it's a very big challenge in terms of, is it possible in terms of like a policy? Like, for example, when you use, you know, most of the time you won't use it. I'm not talking about it in terms of procurement. I'm saying in terms of patient safety. For example, if you need, for example, wherever you use diazepam, you need to have flumazenil. But you find this is not the case. The drug is available, but the antidotes become a big challenge, or dantrolene and such. So I'm just thinking in terms of like a policy, is it something that can be done from PPB? Thank you.
Thank you, Daktari. So in terms of generics and from your question, because what probably is coming out is the issue of maybe suspected therapeutic ineffectiveness. And that one you need to be reported, because if it's reported through even the hospital pharmacy, then it gets to PPB, then investigation is done and it is possible for the team to look at it. Because I know some hospitals probably in the past have had some issues with therapeutic efficacy, and have even gone to an extent of changing the procurement, but of course also reporting to PPB so that the same can be followed. But one thing also that is usually a challenge, and I know like right now, there are efforts to try and build a bioequivalence facility and facilities where they can do extra testing, because most of the time you'll find that these products, if they're taken to the lab and the normal compendial tests are done, they will actually pass it. But then we appreciate the fact that sometimes some of these effects could be human related, not necessarily maybe the drug. We've also had cases where it could be the patient factors or the person administering. So I would encourage that it's important that it's also reported. In terms of policies, this is something that should be raised at the ministry level, because they're the ones who do the policy for treatment guidelines, clinical guidelines. So this is something that can be done at the ministry level. Of course, PPB will give its guidance, but the agenda is driven by the Ministry of Health. So again, this will be important information that should be passed through the pharmacy. They're the ones who do the procurement, and they can raise it up so that the ministry can also have it as part of or in the treatment policy, like maybe in the Kenya essential medicines list, so that when even procurement is being done, they have this in mind to make sure that it's also available whenever it's needed. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's a good.
Any parting comments? I need to conclude in the interest of time. Okay.
Thank you, Teddy. I would want to say thank you to all the participants who have actually taken part of this webinar. I can see even at this time we still have 68 participants. And also thank the KSA for giving us this platform to just sensitize our colleagues in the profession. And it is good that we've actually gotten a request of collaborating with the anesthesiologists to ensure just patient safety. And I would encourage that we document and report all events that we come across, even as we deal with our patients. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Pamela. Thank you, Christabel, for making this a very engaging dialogue. Thank you, Dorothy from HOPAC. Thank you very much for your sponsorship and participation in this presentation. Again, I'd like to thank all of the participants for making time and attending this presentation. The only announcement I'd like to remind members is about the conference registration for our KSA conference. The early bird registration closes on 30th of April, so we still have a few days left. And thank you very much. I think at this point, I'd like to draw the meeting to a close. I'd like to wish each and every one of you a good night. Thank you. You can leave at your convenience.
Thank you.